Alien 3 has finally been released in glorious 4K, but it is not an official release from Disney or 20th Century Studios. It is also not the theatrical or assembly cut versions that we've seen previously. Rather, it is a new fan edit, a labor of love 5 years in the making that has recently taken fan circles by storm. I've watched it myself and wanted to talk about it today and offer some of my thoughts. As a fan of Alien 3, I've been waiting and waiting for a 4K version of the film, and even when it does eventually get that upgrade, it's certainly not going to come with the fanfare that the first two movies did when they arrived on 4K. It's always been the black sheep of the original series, but there are those who truly appreciate the film and see the greatness within its grasp despite all the flaws. Without a doubt, the team at Project A34K have the dedicated appreciation of the film, and have created this great moment for Alien 3 and its admirers. To give you a further idea of what this cut entails, here's a description from their website. At Project A34K, we are dedicated to revitalizing the visual experience of the 1992 science fiction horror classic Alien 3, giving it all the post-production attention it always deserved. An underrated gem, it perfectly and unapologetically closes the trilogy of Ellen Ripley's story, Clones Don't Count, and we're here to see that it looks its best. The greatest tragedy of Alien 3 has never been the dark turns the story takes, or even the struggles director David Fincher faced during production, causing him to abandon the picture during editing, but that the film has never been presented in a way that quite does it justice. We have worked for 5 years to painstakingly clean up every visual effect, bringing viewers a stunning 4K experience with a full professional shot-by-shot color regrade to make every frame bolder and more cinematic, all while preserving the gritty, grainy character of the film. I've mentioned this before in my video talking about the controversial 4K cut of James Cameron's Aliens, but I should stress here again, I'm not the most technically savvy person when it comes to describing picture quality of 4K transfers. I can't really critique this cut on a technical level, other than that I can notice the differences from previously released home video transfers of the film. I've seen Alien 3 countless times over the years, maybe more than all the other movies, over several different formats, and whenever an upgrade comes along, it's an exciting thing for me. I'm so very familiar with this movie that I can appreciate new things that stand out in ways they may not have before. Little background details, the scope of the sets and the matte paintings, the beads of sweat on the actors' faces. It all seems to improve and become all the more immersive with each improved format. This was true when I first saw the film on DVD compared to all of the times I've watched it on VHS, and true when comparing the DVD to the Blu-ray. Now we have this 4K transfer, and even more I've been sucked into the film and have been able to appreciate this transfer, if not on a technical level, then on a level of someone who has watched all of these versions before. But looking back on some of the HD footage that I've become accustomed to since the 2011 Blu-ray release for comparison, which you're seeing now on the screen compared to the Legacy cut, it does feel as if the HD release wasn't everything it could have been. Don't get me wrong, it looks good, but it seems as if, in order to highlight the details offered by this new-at-the-time format, transfers were a little brighter, much more so, I think, than their DVD predecessors. It's not really anything anyone may immediately notice unless there is something for comparison, but while I think the HD transfer looks very nice, it may not be true to the intents offered by the original theatrical experience. So the Legacy cut has retained what one could argue is the true range of colors and brightness levels that was originally intended in 1992, cleaned up to the best possible resolution. Not much more I can really express myself, but to give you a better idea of what was achieved, here are the notes from the Project A34K website. The first significant visual change of the Legacy cut was to adjust the color grading. I have selected a palette that I feel is faithful to the tone of the film, but that accentuates the colors and brings the picture to life in a new way. As is, the colors of Alien 3 can appear flat and lacking in character, often making the hopelessness feel smothering. I feel the visuals should be bolder and have more confidence, and be more in keeping with the look of the film's predecessors, making the trilogy feel like a more unified experience. The next big change was upscaling the resolution from 1920 by 810 to 3840 by 1620. The first two films in the series have now been released in 4K, and I think the trilogy's stunning conclusion should get the same treatment. While I lack access to the original film's prints to do a ground-up remaster, I have sourced the best publicly available software to create a 4K upscale that preserves all the detail of the original film, including its characteristic grainy look. Combining this with the new color grading and enhanced visual effects, my goal is to make the Legacy cut the go-to way for many fans to enjoy the film. Equally fascinating to the visual restoration of the film are the editing choices made in presenting Alien 3's overall narrative. Comparing the theatrical version to the assembly cut is something, as a fan, I've always struggled with, because there are things I like about both. Each have their strengths, and in a lot of instances, strengths from the theatrical version are missing from the assembly cut, and of course vice versa. Previously on the channel, I went into great detail comparing all of these differences in an attempt to express which version I preferred. I said at the time, and still believe now, that probably the ideal version of Alien 3 would have three important elements. Retaining the dog, Spike, as host for the alien, retaining the plot line of capturing the alien and Golic setting it free, and the Queen chestburster coming out of Ripley at the end. Anything else included in either cut may come down to your own preferences and what you may or may not feel is important to leave in the film. The Legacy cut, much to my delight, includes those three core elements that I feel make Alien 3 the best possible movie it can be. Everything else comes down to the editor's own preferences and what they felt was appropriate to keep in or excise from the film. All of these decisions are outlined and justified on the website, so if you're interested in those details, check out a34k.net for the full outline. There are quite a few I want to talk about here, some very well done and some I don't necessarily agree with. The very first thing you may notice in this edit is the lack of the egg and the facehugger aboard the Sulaco during the opening credits. If you've happened to have seen the workprint version of Alien 3, it's actually closer to that version of the opening than either of the officially released cuts. I don't mind seeing those additions, and it definitely gives you something to ponder, or even obsessively speculate over, for decades, but I certainly understand the rationale behind this decision. Let's not get hung up on the presence of an egg, and who may or may not have been face-hugged, and just keep it mysterious. Let the revelations unfold as the movie later presents them. The egg and the facehugger inserts are removed, and perhaps they ultimately did more harm than good by being included in the first place, despite all of the justifications attempted through fan theory videos over the years. One thing I never really cared for when it came to the assembly cut was the moment with the crash site and Superintendent Andrews' report to the company. I thought it worked better and felt more appropriately paced in the theatrical version. The report visuals shown on the screen promptly inform us of the unfortunate fates of Hicks, Newt, Bishop, and the survival of Ripley, and I feel is more impactful presented that way. It just doesn't pack the same punch as seeing Andrews typing it up, though it is interesting to see this alternate footage. Needless to say, with Babe, the Ox, ultimately becoming the host for the alien in that version, it's necessary to show that version of the prisoners getting to the crash site. The Legacy cut leans more into the assembly cut footage, but I think makes a good compromise of elements from both versions, and it is able to pace it all in, I think, a better way. We do have the inclusion of the oxen aiding in retrieving the EEV, but also some shots from the theatrical cut of Hicks, Newt, and Bishop, and Spike also makes his appearance. The later shot of him barking at the facehugger is also restored, along with the scene where Murphy sees the marks on his face, making it clear the dog is the host. However, the scene where Murphy and Frank bring the deceased Babe into the abattoir is actually included in the Legacy cut. To me, this scene has always stood out as a pace-breaker, and I think cutting from Newt's autopsy to the funeral in Leadworks works a lot better. The thing is, as far as the assembly cut goes, it is essential in establishing the Ox as the host, so it simply can't be removed. But aside from the integral plot details, you could argue that it's good to have a scene that establishes the prisoner characters a little bit more. Get to know them and their personalities just a little bit. The Legacy cut makes another interesting compromise here. The scene with Murphy, Frank, and the Ox is included, but condensed. As far as we're concerned in this version, the Ox just died, as they probably do from time to time on this planet, and they're going to make a nice meal out of it. There are no ominous reasons behind Babe's death. The scene goes on with their conversation about Ripley being the focus, and it does not include the reveal of the facehugger as it does in the assembly cut. One of the changes in the Legacy cut that took me a little bit off guard was not the removal or inclusion of any specific moment or scene, but actually a music change. During the scene where Ripley is retrieving Bishop from the scrapyard and is attacked by the prisoners, only to be saved by Dylan just in the nick of time. The score passage by composer Elliot Goldenthal is titled Wreckage and Rape, and I think is a really good piece of music. So good, I guess, that he would end up using it again in his score to Batman Forever, during the scene where Robin saves a girl from being attacked by a group of neon face-painted gang members. I always thought that was interesting, how both these attack and rescue scenes have the same score. But the score is changed in the Legacy cut. Here is the reasoning for this change according to the website. Elliot Goldenthal's haunting score is one of the defining features of Alien 3. It's so rich and atmospheric, it's basically a character unto itself. The score is almost flawless in my opinion, only dropping the ball in one part of the film, and that is the scene where Ripley is assaulted by 4 of the prisoners in the Fury 161 scrapyard. It's a tense and harrowing scene, and I always felt the heavy rock music just didn't fit the tone. It's like something from an action scene, and an action scene in a different movie at that. Well, it happens to be true, actually. I've rescored the scene with music I feel is more in keeping with the weight of what we see on screen. The tracks I've used to build this new score are First Attack, Clement Dies, It Started Part 2, and More Bait and Chase from the official soundtrack. While I personally don't agree with this change, and I like the music as is, I do very much appreciate that this is something that irked the editor enough to make this decision. I'm sure a good number of fans will welcome the change, or at least be interested enough in experiencing how the different music gives the scene a different feel, which it does. Another change that actually took me a little back was the removal of some dialogue during the scene where the prisoners are preparing their plan to trap the beast in the toxic waste tank. There's an exchange between Ripley and Dylan where Dylan asks Ripley why they should put their asses on the line for her. Ripley's response, "Your asses are already on the line. The only question is, what are you going to do about it?" This is cut out, the rationale being that Dylan already suggested earlier that Ripley should take charge. So, why in the next few minutes of the film is he questioning her? Fair enough, I guess, but sometimes a good line is just a good line, and I really like that moment with Ripley. Personally, I wish that it had stayed in. Maybe one of the best examples of how well this was edited, though, is later on during the preparation to lure the alien through the leadworks. The assembly cut removed some moments that I really liked, namely David speaking to Jude about his doubts regarding their plan, and a small moment with Aaron looking in the mirror, similarly to the earlier shot of Ripley. Instead, those are replaced by a moment with William praying and Gregor asking him if he actually believes in God, along with some further shots of the prisoners getting ready. What the Legacy cut is able to do is fuse all of these moments together, editing them seamlessly with a great flow that builds up all of the anticipation to this sequence. This is a perfect example of taking things that worked from both versions and editing them together in a really effective way. While the assembly cut had fascinating reinsertions, there were many moments that I think negatively impacted the overall momentum of certain scenes, and this is also true of the finale, where Ripley has to make the decision to sacrifice herself instead of trusting the company. It's paced just about perfectly in the theatrical cuts, and Goldenthal's score undercuts it to the highest emotional impact possible. In the assembly cut, with some additions, it doesn't sync as well as it should, and it does take away from the emotional impact. The editor of the Legacy cut seems to feel this way too, so some trims are made. Most notably is a moment from the assembly cut where Ripley pauses and says, "You're crazy." A nice moment, but it does affect the momentum, so that was cut. And of course, in Ripley's final act, the assembly cut gives us an alternate shot of Ripley falling into the furnace, without the alien queen bursting from her chest, as we saw in the theatrical version. The Legacy cut gives us the chest burster, and it also gives us some improved special effects. Originally, this was a very hastily put together special effects shot in the theatrical version, one of the last things to be filmed, and some of the visuals suffered for it. There is a strobing that just couldn't be gotten rid of, and the Legacy cut removes this as much as possible. This is not at all the extent to the tweaked special effects when it comes to the Legacy cut. Perhaps its biggest appeal may be in the SFX improvements throughout. Eventually we may get an official release of Alien 3 on 4K. We may even get a slightly different official cut, who knows? But would they go through the great lengths that the team of Project A34K went to in order to enhance the special effects? Somehow I don't think so, and I guess you have to leave it to the hardcore fans to make these new appraisals. Here's what the Legacy Cut website has to say about these alterations. Without question, the greatest challenge of Project A34K was doing justice to the special effects of the xenomorph itself. While the rod puppet used to create the alien had a lot of promise, a rushed post-production and the limitations of the technology meant that it never quite reached its full potential, and the end result was at times jarring and immersion-breaking, detracting from the overall experience. When I eventually decided to enhance all visual effects in the film, environments, etc., improving how the alien looked running on all fours and feeding on its prey was the inception of the project, and has been where most of the work has been put in. The core problems with these shots were predominantly the color grading, which was seldom a good match for the background plate, often leaving the creature as though it were separate from the environment and other elements in the frame, and the rushed process of trimming the puppet from the background, leaving a jagged and unclean edge around the alien. This was corrected by first breaking each shot down, one by one, into individual frames, then moving the image into Photoshop and painstakingly tracing around the alien, first with a mouse and later with a Wacom tablet. The compositing was often so messy, and the rod puppet itself so intricate, that using a software like Silhouette would have been impossible. When the alien was isolated from the background frame, the outlines were painted out to remove the ragged edge, and then the background plate itself painted inward to create a cleaner line. When the two elements were separated, blur methods were used to make the creature more at home in its environment, and color masking was used to uniform it with the plate. This process was completed hundreds of times for each individual composited frame in the film. More than 20 xenomorph shots have been enhanced frame by frame. Each frame, depending on the complexity of the shot, could take anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours. All xenomorph shots were completed in-house at Project A34K. The results, I have to say, are astonishing. I've always admired the photochemical effects of Alien 3. I think Richard Edlund is a genius special effects artist, and within the context of its time, the effects of Alien 3 are groundbreaking. I truly appreciate them, but they are dated. Here in the Legacy Cut, they're not replaced, for the most part, but improved upon. And some of the more questionable rod puppet effects, such as the shots we see when the alien runs after Junior and when it escapes from the waste tank, are discarded entirely. And probably for the best. What we're left with are the best possible looking effects that are still true to the original intentions at the time. If you're a fan who enjoys Alien 3 well enough, but just can't get over the effects, then I highly recommend the Legacy Cut for this reason alone. It truly is remarkable work. It is a superb restoration of highly imaginative but flawed special effects with some creative license thrown in. For example, the scene where Jude is killed by the alien now includes an added effect of the alien's tail, not shown previously. Also a really nice touch here, when the alien is running on the wall after David, you may notice it treads right over this non-functioning security camera. Hardly a detail most people will notice in such a fast shot. But in the Legacy Cut, we see that the alien breaks the camera as it passes, complete with a new sound effect added. Great stuff. And there are plenty of new sound effects you can notice in these improved visuals, more alien hissing and growling sounds. Also a really nice Easter egg, I won't tell you where, but you can hear one of the screech sound effects from the alien warriors from Aliens in one moment, which put a grin on my face. With all the picture and sound restoration, the new editing, enhanced special effects, what might end up being the most controversial of the Legacy Cut are the alien POV shots. In this version, anytime we see the alien's point of view, the image is given a reddish hue with some slight distortion from light sources. When watching this cut, I had some mixed feelings about it. I wasn't sure if it was entirely necessary. I could maybe take it or leave it. But I began to warm to it pretty quickly. It's actually a really cool touch and makes this cut stand out even more. It's not like it's really over the top or anything. They didn't go full Alien Covenant, just an added detail to add further to the experience. And one final note, just in case you're curious, yes, the pulse rifles fired by the Weyland-Yutani commandos at the end do in fact make the proper noises in this version. So, is Alien 3 the Legacy Cut worth seeking out? You better believe it is. I don't think a perfect version of Alien 3 will ever exist because of the way David Fincher's vision was trampled upon, but there is a great movie in here somewhere. As the saying goes, films are never completed, they're only abandoned. In 2003, Charles D. Luzurica gave us an incredible gift through incredible work in bringing the assembly cut to life, along with further improvements in 2011. But those versions always came with a warning, and that warning seems to have been lost over time. It is not a director's cut. Over the years, the assembly cut seems to more be commonly referred to as the special edition, further adding to some confusion. But there is no such thing as a director's cut of Alien 3, and there never will be. Its director was, for all intents and purposes, fired. The film abandoned, and those who still believe in it may venture to salvage it. The team behind Project A34K are true believers. This is the best fan edit of a film I've ever seen, though maybe I'm biased. But I highly recommend checking it out if you're a fan of Alien 3 or if you're just plain curious. You can visit the website to join their mailing list to learn more. I know the demand is high right now and they're working to accommodate, but if you're able to track it down, it is well worth it. As always, I'd like to thank you very much for watching today. Please be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe to keep up with the latest from Alien Theory. My very special thanks today goes out to Nicholas Butta, our Weyland-Yutani executive, and Gregory Ford, the Patreon Hive Praetorian. A very special thanks to Lady Anne in the Ellen Ripley Tier of Excellence. If you'd like to join the Hive and support the channel, check out my Patreon page for further information. In the meantime, you can follow me on social media. Follow @alien_theory on X, formerly Twitter. Follow @AlienTheoryYT on Facebook and Instagram for more. And until next time, this is Alien Theory, signing off.